For the past few summers before the pandemic, one of my good friends from my hometown would invite 16 of his friends over for a day-long homemade version of Survivor. We'll call this friend Jeff because he really did become Jeff Probst for the day. Jeff is someone that I've known since we were kids. He's a few years older than me, but we would find ourselves in the same social groups because I played sports with his younger brother, who we'll call Christoph. We went to the same college and took classes together. I can't say enough nice things about Jeff. Jeff exudes leadership in kind of a subtle way, like a quiet extrovert. In my mind, he's basically the ideal person to host these Survivor gatherings because he strikes so many balances. He's really meticulous and organized about setting up challenges, twists, and the general flow of the game, but also not so rigid as to get tripped up by slight deviations in circumstances. He's super passionate about Survivor, not in a way that alienates those who aren't as familiar with the show, but rather his enthusiasm rubs off on everyone playing and creates a really immersive experience. Most importantly though, he divests the attention from himself and allows the players to drive the adventure. A lot of Jeff's egoless leadership qualities were honed from his tenure as a director of a ministry group at our college. I think he was also a camp counselor in the past, and that makes perfect sense because Survivor Day ended up feeling like an adult summer camp, and we were all there for it. So just to orient the Zoomers here who have never heard of it, Survivor is a long-running reality television show that debuted in 2000, where 16 to 20 strangers compete for $1 million prize over 39 days. At the beginning of each season, the contestants are split up into tribes and essentially stranded on a tropical island with only a bag of rice and beans. It's up to the tribes to erect a shelter, make fire, and supplement their nutrition with fruits on the island and fish from the sea. Every 3 days, the tribes will compete against each other in 2 challenges. The first is a reward challenge in which the winning tribe receives some kind of survival aid. Typically rewards are fishing gear, pillows and blankets, food, and the occasional private screening of Adam Sandler's critically acclaimed blockbuster Jack and Jill. The second challenge is an immunity challenge. The losing tribe will be forced to attend tribal council where they will vote out one of their own members. At some point in the game when the tribes become smaller, usually when there are around 10 to 12 players left, the tribes will merge into a single tribe and the team challenges will be replaced with individual reward and immunity challenges. After the merge, contestants that are voted out are placed on a judicial body called the jury. When the merged tribe progressively cannibalizes itself and only 2 or 3 contestants remain in the game, the power shifts to this jury of eliminated contestants who vote for one of the remaining players to win the game. This is essentially how Jeff's homemade Survivor was structured, except instead of starving us for 39 days on a beach 2 miles down the road from a Philippine McDonald's, we played in the exotic suburbs of Milwaukee and it took about 7 hours and we went out to dinner after. The television show became a cultural icon in the early 2000s and produced some just incredible meditations on human behavior. Before the gameplay became refined, the show was focused more on exploring how people from different social strata create and destroy bonds under extreme physical and mental duress. There are some more pragmatic considerations, like how do you maintain the cooperation of a group of intensely self-interested people toward a common goal? How do you convince 9 people that you deserve $1 million when you backstab them and ruin their chance to win that same prize? But then there are some moments that can only happen in such artificial circumstances. I mean, you have the quintessential ones like Johnny Fairplay lying about his grandmother dying to win a reward challenge, Sue telling Kelly at Final Tribal Council that she wouldn't stop to give her a drink if she was dying on the side of the road, Rob and Amber falling in love on the island and getting engaged on live television. But then you have things like Richard, the arrogant gay consultant, making the most unlikely allegiance with Rudy, the crusty old military vet.
Me and Richard got to be pretty good friends. Not in a homosexual way, that's for sure.
Gabe from Survivor Marquesas is struggling to balance in-game societal world building with the necessary politicking. Ian from Survivor Palau dramatically forfeiting his chance to win the final immunity challenge to restore his friendship with eventual winner Tom. Survivor at its core was a social experiment, but as the seasons progressed, the show evolved into a primarily strategic affair. New twists and advantages were introduced, and the meta adapted just as fast. Where in Season 1 the alliance concept was considered to be repulsively amoral, in the modern game deceit and subterfuge are practically celebrated so long as you're not too vindictive about it. And so the poignant social commentary slowly phased out in favor of hidden immunity idol scavenger hunts, complex voting strategies, and occasionally silly shit like this. But even though modern Survivor is almost unrecognizable in comparison to its original vision, after 20 plus years, it has still managed to be compelling television. And this was the craziest part of Jeff's homemade Survivor games, that even though our game is less than 1% as long as the real thing, we're well fed with snacks, the stakes are so low, so many elements of the series actually get replicated. You feel the disappointment of losing a tribal immunity challenge, the thrill of flat out lying to someone's face, the paranoia when people stop talking to you before tribal, the pit in your stomach when you see your name come up on the vote. We've had brutal blindsides, we've made people cry, we've had bitter juries, we've made somebody throw up during the gross food challenge, we had somebody purposely throw a challenge to vote out their partner, we even had a fucking medevac, like I'm not even joking. I'm a big fan of Survivor. I've been watching since the first episode, but playing Jeff's version has given me such a different perspective and appreciation of what the contestants go through, even if only on a minute scale. If anyone watching has a chance to participate in a fan-run experience like this, even if only online, as is probably the only way these days, I can't recommend it enough. So to get to the 16-person quota, Jeff pulled from two main social groups that were basically mutually exclusive, his hometown friends and his college friends from the ministry group. When it came to gameplay, these two groups could not be more different. Jeff's ministry friends were super kind and genuine, and talking to them outside the context of the game, they reflected Jeff's more sincere aspects.
Religious people.
Contrast this with the hometown heroes, who were total savages by comparison. We weren't there for a good time. We were out for blood. The focal point of this group was my best friend from back home. Let's call him Owen. Everyone watching this who knows him, you'll know why. Owen is an absolute character. I can't even begin to describe this guy. But the one thing I can say is that this dude is the single most competitive person I've ever met. Like, I played college sports and still have not met anyone as intensely competitive as Owen. Ever since we were kids, no matter what we were doing, everything was a competition. Sliding down a hill? Game on. Let's see who could stand on their sled the longest. Playing a board game? He'd eat his own feces before he'd let me win. And the crazy thing is that he would win 80% of the time, even at things he had no business winning, simply due to his sheer force of will. He was even competitive with games that everyone else refused to play. Like, holy shit, this one time we were in elementary school, right? And we played mock Winter Olympics at our friend's house who had a downhill driveway that led into the street. We'd adapt skiing events like slalom by scootering around cones down the driveway. We set up a biathlon course with Nerf guns. I think we might have had a roller hockey game in there. You know, some peak 10-year-old suburban shit. So one day during our mock Olympiad, Owen came over and was like, yo, who wants to race me in skeleton? He had this whole thing planned out. He's gonna lie head first on a skateboard at the top of the hill and roll down to the finish line at the bottom, right into the street. And he was trying to get us to do this with him. We were like, Owen, 1, none of us want to die. 2, none of us have ever even been on a skateboard. And 3, none of us want to die. But to his credit, Owen did get that skeleton gold medal in the Maple Lake version of the '72 Sapporo Winter Olympics, even if only by default. So when it came to Survivor, Owen was no different. And in fact, he ratcheted it up by about 11 notches because he was still a fan of the show. Like the first year my wife and I played. We're on our way there in the car together. Owen texts us both and is like, let's make an alliance and don't tell the other person. He made the game simultaneously so fun and so freaking stressful. Like, he's my best friend and all, but I knew he would fuck me over in a heartbeat. Now, the yin to Owen's yang was Jeff's brother, Christoph. Christoph is super easygoing, a real chill bro chill type. One thing I always appreciated about Christoph was his non sequitur humor. Like, Owen and I could be talking about anything, and Christoph would interject with shit that just made no sense, like,
hi, welcome to Chili's.
But at the same time, it made perfect sense because it was Christoph. That was Christoph's whole image. He was a put-together, relaxed dude and fun to be around, but underneath it all, he was kind of a low-key weirdo. And when it came to Survivor, that duality carried over, where on the surface he was playing it straight and mellow, but when it came down to it, his decision-making was so fucking erratic. And the hilarious thing was that he would try to convince you that you were the one who fucked up, and because he was so even-tempered, it would work. It'd be like, Christoph, why'd you vote her out? She was part of our alliance. And then he'd snow you with some bullshit justifications, and it seemed like it all made sense in his head, so it was like, yeah, okay, Christoph, my bad, bro, I'll do better next time. The other central figure in this story is my wife, who we'll call Amanda. You'll see why at the end. Amanda isn't from Maple Lake, but at this point she's an honorary hometown hero. Now, I could go on and on about how great of a wife she is, but that doesn't seem relevant here, so instead I'll go on and on about how she is by far the best player at these Survivor outings. Some of it comes down to her intangible magnetism that makes people want to work with her, but I think like Jeff, she strikes so many balances in just the right way. She exudes confidence without being intimidating. She's gregarious without being overbearing. She's so skilled socially, but not in a threatening way that makes her a target. She's been responsible for booting so many people, but no one directs their ire or frustration at her. What I like most about her game, though, is that she's constantly talking to everyone, even those on the outs, and she'll present people with voting opportunities and act as the glue holding disparate parties together, particularly just after the merge is where she starts to shine. And it's funny because on the car ride back after these games, we'll decompress about our experiences, and Amanda's big takeaway is always how stressful it was, but damn, if she's not fantastic at what she does. Her other big takeaway is how she made several new friends that she just voted out, so if that doesn't say something about her social game, I don't know what does. So like I said, the ministry group and the hometown group are the main blocks in Jeff's Survivor games. And in fact, in the past 5 games, I think there's been a cohort of 10 people who have played in every single game. So every year, there are the same cues to work off of. Like you get in a tribe and the first 2 observations are always what's the boy-girl ratio and what's the ministry-hometown balance. And then you have to figure out whether Owen and Kristoff are in full bromance mode or if they're at each other's throats that day. And later in the game, you have to gauge whether or not the pre-merged tribal alliances supersede ministry alliances or hometown alliances. But the really cool thing is that even though year after year you're playing with the same people, the holistic character of the seasons can be entirely different. Case in point was the 2017 season of Maple Lake Survivor, where in most years everyone universally has a great time. This year everyone is salty as fuck. I think what happened was that Jeff invited a couple of newbies into the game, and these people attained a critical mass post-merge, and the game devolved into a pagonging of maddening proportions. For all the non-Survivor people out there, a pagonging is when one alliance outnumbers the other and wipes them out, like how the Tagi 4 decimated Pagong in the first season. But it wasn't a strategic affair in the slightest. It was more like the dominant alliance had the most team-oriented altruistic people, so at Final Tribal Council they were like, yay, we win! And everyone else they voted out and refused to work with on the jury was like, damn, I gotta vote for one of you to win? Don't any of you care that only one of you actually wins? I think the interaction that sums up this season the best was when Amanda was trying to convince one of the girls to flip on one of the guys in her tribe and create an all-girls alliance, and the girl told her, I don't know if that would be authentic of me. I don't want to knock on these people too much because they really were super nice, and it's the responsibility of everyone playing to read and respond to the social dynamic present. Like when playing with this crew, a lot of the hometown people who got antsy and tried to make moves, myself included, were summarily punished and voted out. We would have been better off reading the room and trading the scheming for out-alliancing the alliance from the inside. This is where the story begins, leading up to Jeff's 2018 Maple Lake Survivor. The previous year left a bad taste in all of our mouths in the hometown group, so we were going to do everything possible to take back control of the game, not just in a competitive sense, but also in that we wanted the game to reflect the blood sport we built it up to be from watching the TV show, not the good-natured team bonding experience from last time. So like any self-respecting Survivor contestant, I went to Owen's house to hash out a pregame alliance. It was going to be me, Amanda, Kristoff, Owen, Owen's sister Blair, and Blair's friend Serena. And we were discussing which ministry friends would be the most open to join our pregame alliance. Like, no joke, we were scouting these people's Facebook activity, analyzing the strength of their friendships through photos. Like if we saw 2 of these people together in an Instagram pic, forget it, we weren't flipping them. It was honestly a fucking NSA scale operation. But there was one hitch. Blair couldn't stand Kristoff. She kept insisting, Kristoff's a snake, you can't trust Kristoff, even as we're in the weeds of planning out the optimal strategy for the human knot challenge in the 3rd tribal immunity. And because I hadn't had any first-hand experience with Kristoff being a wild card, I brushed Blair off. But I wasn't about to let the soul of the game hinge on a pregame alliance that was fracturing almost as soon as it was conceived. Amanda and I had to do something else to guarantee that this year would be more chaotic than any other year in the past, and that something was to make a fake hidden immunity idol. Not just one fake hidden immunity idol, 3 fake hidden immunity idols. And let's give one of those idols special powers. And how about some clues to the idols? And let's throw in some special advantages for good measure. So just for some context, Jeff always claimed that there were hidden immunity idols in his game, but I don't think anyone ever found them, so it's kind of dubious whether they actually existed. That's why I felt like it was necessary to flood the area with clues and advantages, because I wanted to maximize the chances that at least one person would find something. Also, it was kind of a goofy meta-commentary on recent seasons of the television show that placed unreasonable focus on advantages and idols in place of social maneuvering. Now, fake idols have had a long history in the television series, from Ozzy's stick to Joey Amazing's necklace that could sell at Tiffany's. And I fully admit that creating an idol within the confines of the game is much different than bringing contraband in from the outside like we did here. But fairness was not our primary concern. Rather, we wanted to destabilize the tribal alliance structure that made last year so boring. It wasn't that we were trying to cheat out of a misplaced desire to win. We were so appreciative of the experience that Jeff cultivated that we wanted to add to it in a way that was consistent with the spirit of the show. The cherry on top would be a poor, clueless player attempting to play one of our faux idols in the shitstorm of confusion that would follow. I can't actually remember whether Amanda or I came up with the fake idol idea, but the division of labor afterwards was clear. I would write the clues and Amanda would make them look legit. So I opened up PowerPoint and whipped these shits up. Found a nice floral background, used show card Gothic because it seemed pretty close to what was used on the show. Also, every year Jeff instituted a loose theme that would be the title of the season. This year was Embers, so I made sure to put that in the corner. But the most important part of these clues is making sure that they strictly abide by iambic pentameter. I also wanted there to be a certain flow to hiding these things, so that clues were relatively easy to find, but actual idols and advantages were much more hidden and necessitated the clues. Like I said, I wanted at least one person to find one of our creations, but I didn't want the payoff to be immediate. I wanted there to be a little bit of a goose hunt to actually get one of these idols. So here is a rough map of the playing area. This big tree right here was the main base of operations where the snacks and benches were. Everyone kind of gravitated toward there before challenges and post-merge. The tree due east was the tribal council area because there's a little fountain that we could write our votes on. Just beyond the tribal council area was the swamp protected by some brush. Usually people would pee here during the games, yes, even the girls. Due south of the big tree was the playground and another tree. The playground was in play as long as no one else was there. We didn't want to have to bowl over kids to look for idols. Right next to the playground was another tree. This was Redemption Island. Now Redemption Island was a twist that started showing up in certain seasons of Modern Survivor. The idea is that if you get voted out of your tribe, you're not actually kicked out of the game just yet, but instead you go to Redemption Island where you can battle your way back in. This twist kind of had a bad reputation in the television show because the Redemption Island battles would take way too much time out of episodes, and it undermined both the emphasis of social maneuvering and the finality of being voted out. But in Jeff's game, it was actually a really good idea because it kept people being active participants for longer. Like, how much would it suck if you get voted out first and you have to sit there and watch your friends play this super immersive game that you're not a part of for 6 more hours? So Redemption Island in this case was a way to make sure that people were engaged and past some kind of minimum threshold of gameplay. West of the big tree was the baseball field backstop. Beyond that was a more private brush bathroom area. And north of the big tree was the rest of the baseball field, a big open space where we could do challenges. The whole park is situated right on Maple Lake, and when the weather was nice and the summer sun was out, everything felt picturesque. Now I can't remember exactly where I hid everything, but I'll try my best to recount. Like I said, I wanted the 4 clues to be easy to find, so I think one was underneath the backstop, one was at the Redemption Island tree, one was at the playground tree, and one was in this bag of animal crackers at the big tree. The flow of the clues was important because 2 of the clues led directly to advantages, but the other clues were sequential. So the clue at the Redemption Island tree led to the animal cracker bag clue, and that clue led to the location of the special idol in the swamp. And just to distinguish, for regular hidden immunity idols, you typically need to play them before the votes are read. So there's some strategy around, do I think I'm going home tonight? Can I save it and use it for the next tribal? The special idol though, you can use after the votes are read. So if you get voted out, you can pull out that bad boy and be like, psych motherfucker. But the real innovative hiding spot was actually hiding the steal a vote advantage at tribal council. At the fountain, usually Jeff placed a decorative cloth on top, so I was gonna hide the advantage underneath the cloth. Those of you who watch Adam Klein in season 40 make a desperate attempt to play the tribal council podium as immunity, get fucked, I did it first. But this whole thing couldn't have been as wildly successful as it was without Amanda in the art department. She came up with the idea of making tea paper, so I printed out the clues and she brushed them with tea, burned the edges, rolled it up and tied it together with twine. I'm pissed that I can't find any of these right now because they were fucking legit. Almost too legit. Like, we're tricking Jack Sparrow with these things. And then the night before, we went to Walmart to get the actual immunity idols. Now, we knew that Jeff used rubber duckies as his idols, so we got 2 of those for the regular idols, but we needed something else for the special idol. Something majestic, powerful. Fortunately, right next to the rubber duckies was a crate of toy lions, which was absolutely perfect. We were in the store giggling hysterically at the idea of somebody trying to play this fucking lion as an idol, and the anticipation was just too much. I slept like 3 hours the night before and ran 10 miles that morning to burn off some energy. I was an anxious wreck going into this. So Amanda and I get to Maple Lake for the noon start time. Absolutely beautiful summer day with a nice cool breeze. I had the idols and advantages in my bag and the 4 clues in my shorts pocket so I could start distributing them right away. I'm tweaking out trying to make sure that no one suspects anything or sees my pockets. First thing Jeff does is split us into 3 tribes of 6. Christoph and I are grouped together and our home base is the big tree. Amanda goes to the 2nd tribe and they're headquartered at the playground tree. Owen, Blair, and Serena are on the 3rd tribe by the baseball backstop. You know how at the beginning of Game Changers, as soon as they get to the beach, Tony just bolts into the jungle looking for idols? That was literally me. As soon as we get split up into tribes, I start sprinting around the park, but I'm not looking for idols. No. I'm unloading my fakes as fast as possible. Now Owen sees this and starts frantically running around, but he's actually searching for clues and idols unlike me. And everybody seems pretty amused, like we're playing a bit, but they have no idea what's actually happening. Pretty soon in, we have our first tribal immunity challenge. I think Amanda's team lost, so they had to go to tribal, but that was good for me because I had more time to hide my shit. So I'm over at the baseball diamond to plant a clue under the backstop. Owen's coming back from the big tree looking for clues, and he sees me at his camp. So typical Owen, he starts to get verbally aggressive. You know, joking obviously, but sometimes I can never tell whether he's about to square me up or not. I try scrambling out of there, and he pushes me. He's like, "Why you in my camp, pussy?" Like, making a big show of it and all. But during the altercation, he gives me a subtle wink and nod toward his pockets. So I look down, and what do I see but one of our totally realistic but totally fraudulent clues sticking out of his shorts. And that's when I knew for a fact that Amanda and I were in too deep. There was no turning back. So I played along with Owen's antics, but also knew in the back of my mind that he was getting swindled on levels he didn't even know were possible. At this point, I was hardly playing the game. The sleep deprivation was catching up to me, not in a lethargic way, but in a way that was heightening my paranoia. If Owen found a clue, had anyone else found the clues? I hid so many, how could I possibly keep track of 18 people's movements? I was in a pretty fortunate position since our tribe of guys was dominating the early physically oriented challenges, although that was about to change when the challenges required a modicum of problem solving that none of us had. The social dynamics hadn't really started to emerge in our tribe because we were winning so much, so I was just biding my time there and trusting that Christoph and I, the two alphas we are, could figure it out when it came time to vote. Meanwhile, I'm scouting everyone else in the game, keeping tabs on who's talking to who, hiding more of our contraband, trying to surreptitiously communicate with Amanda and Owen, but they both seem pretty busy with, actually playing the game. At the second challenge, Owen's team lost, and I do want to highlight this tribal council because the drama that unfolded from this is critical to the story. Now, Owen's tribe was an even split of hometown versus ministry. On the hometown side was Owen, Blair, and Serena, and on the ministry side there were three people. Let's call them Mary, Perry, and Nicole. Nicole was someone that we played with a few times in the past, and she accrued a reputation of being a strategic threat. I personally was always scared of her when she was in the game, and I think everyone else was too, because it always felt like she had tricks up her sleeve. Not in a sneaky way, but more in a way like, fuck, she's gonna outsmart me unless I get rid of her first. Mary and Perry were people we hadn't played with before, so I couldn't speak to their skill sets. But I do want to stop and focus on Mary for a sec, because throughout this whole story, Mary is the ultimate victim. Oh, Mary. Poor Mary. From what I gathered, Mary just moved to Minnesota the month before to work with Jeff's ministry group, and was clearly invited by Jeff as a way for her to meet the rest of the group, which is questionable decision making in the first place. Like, you're gonna bring this girl in who hardly knows anyone into a game that's a trust-breaking generator? Like, you'd have better luck staying friends with this girl after playing Mario Party than you would after playing Survivor. And to top it all off, Mary isn't just playing Jeff Survivor, but she's about to walk into my own personal Twilight Zone episode of Fake Idol Madness. She didn't stand a chance. Anyways, Owen's tribe was about to vote someone out, but there are three people on the hometown side and three people on the ministry side. Someone was gonna have to blink. Now remember that us hometown crew had our pregame alliance, but it turned out that the ministry crew had one of their own. Like, we weren't out of pocket for doing these pregame alliances. Everyone was involved in some sort of scheme. That's how seriously people took this. So their alliance was supposed to be Mary, Perry, Nicole, and a couple other people on Amanda's tribe. But somehow, and I mean, I have no idea what happened, Perry and Nicole turned on Mary in their first tribal council. This poor girl who moved here and wanted a nice outing with her coworkers got backstabbed in the first fucking second. So I didn't know about this other pregame alliance until afterwards, and I just assumed that Mary was a grumpy person or was having a bad day or whatever. But no, she got fucking bodied by her coworkers right out the gate. Like, yeah, I'd be pissed too. The game goes on, and now we're at the third challenge. I have some idols left to hide, but I started to settle down a little bit. And this challenge was a weird one. Like, each tribe had to stand in a line on one of the benches by the big tree and rearrange themselves into the reverse order without falling off. This is where it didn't pay off to have a tribe of uncoordinated, big bumbling guys, so we were summarily wrecked. Like I said, I wasn't too worried though. Christoph and I were in an alliance, and sure enough, he came to me and threw out the name of an obvious first boot. I agreed, and that was that. So we get to tribal, and I was voted off in a 5-1 blindside, which Christoph orchestrated. And afterwards, I won't lie, I was a little upset with Christoph, and I was like, Christoph, what the fuck, man? We had an alliance. And he goes, oh, you were looking for the idol too much, bro. I couldn't trust you. I couldn't retort that I wasn't looking for the idol, but I was hiding fake ones, but I guess I got what I deserved. After I got voted out, I took a full accounting of my tribe and realized that Christoph was friends with all four of them outside the game, and this was my first time I was actually meeting any of them. But regardless, whether Blair was right and Christoph was a snake, or whether I was an unpredictable madman that couldn't be trusted, I was headed to Redemption with Mary and Jen, who was the first person voted out. Now, Redemption Island had an interesting setup. When you get to Redemption, you're given instructions to practice the Redemption Challenge, which gets you back in the game. This year, it was bocce. Now, I'm not gonna say that I'm a bocce pro or anything. No, that's it. I suck at bocce. So I needed all the practice I could get. Unfortunately, the first redemption duel started as soon as I got voted out. Whoever came in first would return to the game, the second place finisher would remain on Redemption Island, and the person who came in last would be eliminated. And yep, I laid an egg and it was super embarrassing, and I was the first person truly eliminated from the game. Jen, who was voted out first, returned, and Mary was stuck on Redemption. But honestly, being fully eliminated afforded me the opportunity to fully commit to my fake idol mission that was still ongoing, and there's plenty more work to be done. At this point, there were 16 people left in the game, and Jeff reorganized the 3 tribes into 2 tribes of 8. This part of the game was highlighted by the utter destruction of the Ministry pre-merge alliance. Perry, who backstabbed Mary, got the boot, and Nicole, who also backstabbed Mary, got fucking medevaced. No joke, she got injured during a challenge and self-eliminated to go to a doctor. This one, I placed the blame squarely on Jeff though. Like usually his challenges are creative, competitive, but most importantly, safe. This time though, he set up a full contact football game. Blair literally speared Owen in the chest. Christoph almost decapitated somebody else. Honestly, Nicole subluxing her knee was about the best case scenario for that war zone. But the irony of the pre-merge Ministry Alliance imploding after turning on each other was pretty rich. So now there are around 12 or so people left in the game. Mary and Perry are on Redemption Island. I'm fully out of the game, but also still fully invested in the pyramid scheme Amanda and I cooked up. And at this point, I didn't really know if the clues and idols started to circulate aside from the one clue Owen showed me. But that was all about to change. Now remember the clue that I hid on Redemption Island. I saw Mary find that clue. The clue said to search in the bag of Oreos, although this year Jeff had animal crackers instead. Just to paint the picture, there's an immunity challenge going on the field. Mary scampers over to the animal cracker bag by the big tree, and I'm standing like 6 feet behind her, intently watching this scene without her knowledge. So Mary is trying to be as inconspicuous as possible digging into this bag of animal crackers. Suddenly she feels the tea paper roll in the bag, and you know how the Chow and Sonic Adventure have an exclamation point over their heads when they get startled? That was Mary when she felt the clue, but she still was trying to keep it on the DL, so she smoothly hides the clue from the bag into her pocket when no one else was looking, except for me glaring at her from right behind. Then, attempting to arouse as little suspicion as possible, she meekly says,
Perry, can I talk to you for a second?
It was fucking surreal, like a real-life allegory of the cave where all the people in the challenge were totally oblivious to this interaction. Mary is one step closer to the truth with this clue that she thinks could get her further in the game, and I'm the omnipotent being that knows it's all bullshit. So now Mary and Perry are deciphering this clue, the place where small streams leak. The idol hunt is temporarily put on pause during the next tribal council where Jen gets voted out for a second time, so she too joins the Redemption Island treasure hunt. While the rest of the players continue on with the game, I have a front row seat to the greatest secret slapstick performance of all time. The 3 Stooges of Redemption Island are pacing around the area struggling to understand the meaning of the clue, and then they finally realize, the place where small streams leak, it's the swamp. So they go over to the swamp and form a human chain, I guess because they're afraid of Minnesota alligators dragging them in or something, I don't know. Like I said, this was the special idol, so I made sure it was extra challenging to procure. Then in a moment of triumph, Jen finds the idol, and her cronies extract her from certain death in the bog. And this was probably the highest point of the day for me. Watching these 3 march back to redemption, trying to quell their excitement, Jen's hands and feet soaking wet, delicately holding onto this toy lion as if it's the second coming of Christ. I'm doing my best here, but I don't think anything I say or show can really fully convey the comedic brilliance of this moment. The shit has me rolling every time I think of it. So if watching the 3 amigos find the lion was the zenith of the fake idol experience, over the next hour, Amanda and I would watch our hoax unravel in dramatic fashion. When there are 10 players left in the game, Jeff announces the second and final Redemption Island play-in challenge, which Jen again wins. So Jen returns to the game, Redemption Island no longer exists, and the tribes finally merge with 11 players total. Mary and Perry, both eliminated, leave the park in disgust. Poor Mary didn't make any friends. I mean, not like I blame her though, I'd be pretty pissed too if my new coworkers shanked me. The merge is roughly the halfway point of the game, and Jeff gives everyone a 20-minute break. Usually people drive a half mile down the road to Jeff and Christoph's house to go to the bathroom. Jeff is always adamant that no one is allowed to talk strategy during this break, but come on, let's be real. We've been building up profiles on everyone here for weeks. What are we gonna do, not talk strategy? And this is where I start to realize that we may have overplayed our hand. Like I said, Jen came back into the game from Redemption Island with the fake lion idol, but the way that Jeff set up the game, the returning player from Redemption Island would be awarded with an idol, a real one. So when Jeff went to give Jen the idols, she's like, oh cool, I get 2? And then proceeds to tell a perplexed Jeff about her near-death experience by the swamp fishing for the idol. At this point, Jeff doesn't take action because he's probably more confused than anything, but he's definitely on high alert. Jeff's wife, Amy, who was helping organize that year, relays this all back to me. She's like, SPV, do you know anything about this? They said they found an idol in the swamp, but we didn't plant one there. Now, obviously, yes, I do know exactly what she's talking about, but I'm not about to come clean anytime soon, so I play dumb, which seems to satisfy her. Remember though, as far as I know, only Owen and Jen have come into contact with our fakes. I'm out of the game. I haven't even talked to Amanda since we got there. Well, Amanda comes back from the break and tells me, SPV, it's anarchy out there. Blair found one of the idols, Jake found the advantage, everyone's forming alliances around these things, and I'm like, fuck, we're really in it, aren't we? So this all comes to a head at the first tribal council of the merge. If you're familiar with Survivor, you'll know that the merge tribal councils are hectic anyways. Usually there are an odd number of players left. It's the first time players with agency can decide to break away from their tribes and change the direction of the game. No one has had much time to form bonds with everyone quite yet. No spoilers, but the Cagayan, Heroes vs. Villains, and South Pacific merge episodes are the quintessential examples. And Jeff's 2018 Maple Lake Survivor would continue the trend of fascinating merge episodes, albeit for a far more unusual set of circumstances. Like Amanda told me, our fake clues and idols completely splintered the social dynamics. Pockets of trust were being molded from these fakes. Some people, I'm sure, were keeping their discoveries to themselves. Everybody was essentially playing a game that didn't even exist. I don't remember who won the first individual immunity, but it's not important. It was the merged tribal council. Everyone playing was feeling antsy. I was shitting my pants thinking that one of our advantages could get played at any moment. It was electric. But then fate would swoop in and press the issue. Remember how I said that there was a cool breeze that day? Absolutely beautiful summer day with a nice cool breeze. That breeze had picked up to a steady wind. And remember how I hid that advantage underneath the decorative cloth at the fountain? So I was gonna hide the advantage underneath the cloth. Well, the wind folded the cloth over on itself, leaving the fake advantage completely exposed. And I shit you not, I watched 10 people, many of whom already encountered one of our tea paper rolls, mind you, one by one walk up to the fountain, cast their vote, and totally ignore the advantage that was no more than 3 fucking inches from their hands. It was crazy. I'd watch each person come up, clench my anus in anticipation, and then watch each of them leave the fountain none the wiser. The 11th person was Amanda. She saw the advantage right away and desperately held in a laugh. Meanwhile, I'm trying to surreptitiously signal her to pick up the clue because if Jeff finds it, then we're fucked. Unfortunately, she couldn't translate my Morse code blinks in time, so the advantage is still totally exposed on the fountain. Jeff walks over to collect the votes. I literally cannot breathe at this point. And wouldn't you know it, after 10 of these assholes failed to notice our sin, Jeff sees it and loudly exclaims, "What's this?" My heart is racing. I'm trying to think up any evasive maneuvers I possibly can. Jeff is holding this roll of tea paper to the sky as if it's a Horcrux that might poison him if it gets too close. He unwinds the twine and starts to read the advantage, muttering the words to himself. And without skipping a beat, he's like, "You have found an advantage at tribal council. Before the votes are cast, and you may steal a vote." SPV, what have you done? Now, his instant accusation was not unfounded. Like, we were all crazy invested in this game, but no one there was as unhinged or committed as I was. There was no conceivable way anyone other than me was cooking up a scheme like this. And that includes Owen, who would have amputated himself to avoid getting voted out. Moreover, if I got found out, then obviously Amanda had to be an accomplice, and that could jeopardize her positioning in the game. I had a monumental task ahead of me to deflect the blame. Here's a little PSA for all the kids watching this. I'm never gonna endorse lying in real life. Do your chores, do your homework, say your prayers before bedtime, don't rob the plug, do what you gotta do. Now, this is a very artificial situation. You're supposed to lie in Survivor, and I'm a 55-year-old man. I've earned the privilege to stretch the truth anyways. But if you get in a bind, let's say you lip-synced your MTV performance, you faked that assault, you've been on the juice for a decade, and the press is hounding you for answers, the people are stressing, they want to know the truth. Don't try to be cute. Don't tell half-truths. Definitely don't go into hiding. Just don't fuck around. All you gotta do is deny, accuse. Deny, accuse. It works every time. I didn't release my tax returns before the election. Fuck you, my opponent is the real corrupt one. Deny, accuse. You found my semen on my intern's dress?
I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
Deny, accuse. I used steroids to hit 500 home runs?
I have never used steroids, period.
Deny, accuse. Tried and true, works every time. People come at you with more evidence, deny, accuse some more. If you don't admit that you're in the wrong, then you really didn't do anything wrong. Don't try this with the feds though, they'll fuck you up. The press though, go right ahead. So with that in mind, I wasn't gonna play dumb with Jeff like I did with Amy. This was the big time, no more of that Mickey Mouse bullshit. Deny, accuse, baby. The initial denials can't be too soft or too aggressive. You have to be firm and forceful. SPV, did you do this? No. SPV, obviously you're the only person who would do this. Jeff, I didn't do it. Okay, and then you could slowly escalate the denials to match your accusers, but you have to be one step more adamant than your accusers. So as Jeff started to prod me into a confession, I ratcheted up my rhetoric. I didn't fucking do it, Jeff. Why are you accusing me in front of everyone else? Where's your proof? No more Mr. Nice SPV. You repeatedly come at me with accusations like that, true or not. You better have proof or I will bury you. And I think that's why this worked so well. I'm literally never aggressive in real life. So when people saw how upset I was, it sent a message like, oh shit, SPV's seriously pissed. No way he did it. Honestly, even I was surprised at how effective it was. But the shitstorm was only beginning. Jeff then starts to connect the dots and realizes that this bogus advantage is probably connected with the idol that Jen found in the swamp. So Jeff says, all right, if anyone found an advantage that looks like this, please come forward, it's not real. And for 15 whole seconds, no one came forward. No one wanted to give up these fraudulent clues and advantages they collected on the off chance that they could potentially be real. It was like some prisoner's dilemma shit in action. Everyone holding on to these things was in a tacit mind game with everyone else. But then Jay came forward with his clue, and one by one, people came out of the woodwork to produce our beautiful forgeries. Owen, Blair, Jen, and about 3 other people. And as the scale of the operation was revealed, it only made my guilt more likely. But I was steadfast, I was committed. Deny, accuse. I didn't do it. Of course I did it, but I didn't fucking do it. The odds were mounting against me though, and when a singularly bizarre moment like a mass fake idol reveal happens, you have to make sense out of it all before you move on. You can't just keep playing the game and tell everyone to forget about it. No, someone has to be held accountable. And that someone was probably gonna be me despite my pleas of innocence. But then something remarkable happened. Jen, you remember the famous archaeologist who dug up the special immunity lion, piped up with her own conspiracy theory.
Yeah, I think it was Mary. She seemed like she was taking it super seriously, and I think she even made an alliance before the game, and she was the one who led me to that fake idol.
Let's think about this for a second. Mary, poor Mary, who literally moved here a month ago, didn't know anyone else before today, somehow had the foresight to conceive and print clues that reference very specific landmarks at a park she's never been to, roped somebody else into a wild goose chase for a fake idol, and then, wait for it, left without seeing her plans unfold. Now, obviously this makes no sense, but I'll give Jen the benefit of the doubt because she doesn't know me, and up until this point, she had spent most of the day with Mary, who was probably fuming about how her friends burned her. So this is where the accuse phase of deny, accuse begins. I hopped right on the Mary train, not too enthusiastically because I still had to be careful, but I'm like, yeah, she seemed really upset when she was voted out. And then everyone else started piling on. Even Owen, my best friend who knows exactly the kind of shenanigans I'm capable of, looked me dead in the eyes and he's like,
yeah, I don't think SPV did it.
So the tide is turning quickly in my favor and Amanda comes through to put the final nail in Mary's coffin. Now, as good of a player as Amanda was, lying wasn't actually ever her strong suit. You know, I'm still working on the deny, accuse with her. But uncharacteristically, out of nowhere, in front of everyone, she says, SPV, did you know anything about this? And when she said that, I took it and ran. Obviously not, you would have seen me do this. We lived together, knowing full well that she was an equal part of this madhouse as I was. So that more or less closed out the fake idol saga. Everyone playing was pretty convinced that Mary was the mastermind behind the sprawling operation. Jeff still had his doubts but decided it wasn't worth pursuing, and Amanda and I breathed a massive sigh of relief. Christoph, who was voted out at the merge, cried that the fake idols ruined his game somehow, but he voted me out, so we're even. I couldn't pay too close attention to the development of the rest of the game because I wasn't actually playing, but Amanda kept making it further and further, orchestrating major vote outs, didn't receive any votes herself, and won the last immunity challenge to guarantee a spot in the final 3. I thought for sure she was going to win, but she ultimately lost to Jen, who battled her way back from Redemption Island twice in a nail-biter 5-4 vote. Honestly, both Amanda and Jen played the best versions of their respective paths through the game, and it really was a toss-up. But what pisses me off is that the deciding vote for Jen was cast by none other than Christoph. His reasoning? Oh, Amanda, you already won before. Except no, she hasn't won before, Christoph. In fact, Amanda has made it to the final tribal council 3 times, was never able to seal the deal, which is why I'm calling her Amanda after Amanda Kimmel of Survivor China, Micronesia, and Heroes vs. Villains fame. So I guess Christoph got us in the end after all. After the game ended, everyone seemed satisfied with their experience, much more so than the last year. Amanda and I and the rest of the Hometown Pre-Merge Alliance went out for dinner and hashed out our version of events, but the conversation was mostly focused on these mysterious idols that showed up. Like, what was that about? And they straight up asked me, SPV, did you do this? I stuck to the DDA, deny accuse, and I was planning to take it to the grave, but later on in the night I couldn't help it. They were talking about how real the clues seemed, and I pulled a few unused ones out of my bag, and I'm like, oh, do they look like this? And once they figured out that Amanda and I had been responsible for the biggest hoax of the century after Balloon Boy, we gave them the behind the scenes rundown. I didn't tell Jeff until a couple months later though. I wanted to give him some time to decompress. The next year, Jeff instituted a strict no fake idol policy, but did that stop me? Actually, yes it did. As fun as it was, I never wanted to deal with that stress again. So to conclude, Operation Fake Idol was a moderate success. We managed to escape detection, which was the most important part, but we came one step short of somebody trying to play a rubber ducky or toy lion as an idol. If you're watching this and planning to do this for your own fan-run Survivor, please don't. Or at least ask the organizer if you can, and they'll probably tell you not to. Maybe just stick to the clues, I don't know.